Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode 24 with those just brilliant people that we have today. I'm very excited to introduce everyone. Alisa, Ariel, and Malvika, welcome to AI and Real Life. And now I'll just shut up and now let Alisa talk.
Thank you, my dear. Hello, everyone. So today our episode will be about AI research and development with people in mind. And we have two brilliant ladies with us today from Alan Turing Institute, Malvika Sharan and Ariel Bennett. And they're doing some really interesting things in Alan Turing Institute. And ladies, please introduce yourselves. Just tell us a little bit about what you do there, what Alan Turing Institute is focused on for our audience who might not be necessarily familiar, excuse me, with this research institution. So please, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. So I'm Ariel. I'm the program manager for tools, practices, and systems at the Alan Turing Institute. And my role involves a lot of various different things day to day. I look after the operational side of the work that the tools, practices, and systems program is doing. When I'm not running the operational side of things, I am a contributor to the Turing Way, which is an open source project where I mostly write about emerging research infrastructure roles, as well as the importance of researcher activism in our guide to ethics as well. Malvika, over to you.
Thank you, Ariel. Thanks so much for having us here. We're very excited. I'm Malvika Sharan. I'm a senior researcher at the Alan Turing Institute. I focus on open research and community building, and Ariel does more than what she said. As she said, that she does a lot. She also works with me on a project called the Turing Way Practitioners Hub, which is an extension of the Turing Way, where we take the real world practices from the research context and see how that applies with the companies like small, medium enterprises who are working to adopt AI. There's a lot we can share in this call, so we'll stop there for now.
Yeah, let's save it for
Yeah, so and I know there's a lot to talk about, but we'll try to center ourselves around these three main topics today, which is kind of diversity in research, what kind of tools are being used for AI research these days, and also AI community building and intentionality. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that we're going to be talking about those things not necessarily in some particular order, maybe kind of jumping back and forth as it makes sense, but these are basically like three main pillars we're going to center our discussion around today. And yeah, so that's just a kind of a brief intro.
Definitely digressing. So I'm just
yeah, that's
fair warning. It happens.
Yeah, we'll try to keep the pace though. But yeah, there is so much to talk about, and yeah, I'll stop sharing and let you guys go from there. If you want to share any talk materials, anything that you're working on in this domain, so please.
So to kind of kick things off, I just wanted to ask questions during our prep talk, and we were discussing a lot of stuff. I wish that could have been recorded. And so you mentioned the phrase building AI with people, not at people. Can you, both of you, or either of you, whoever wants to go first, kind of explain that very, very interesting phrase that I liked so much?
That phrase definitely was exactly what Ariel said, but that has been practiced. That's something that we've been practicing for years. We've learned from a lot of people. What we really care about is community building, community engagement. We want to focus on the fact that the technology are not happening in the void. Technology are not being built in the void. They don't get deployed in the void. There is a lot of human element and people involved from the start, from the very start of an idea to engaging people in collecting data or designing projects or even sharing them or monitoring them, or what do we monitor? All of these are happening with people. And a lot of time, those people are not in the room. So when we go out and develop a technology that we think is very cool, deploy it in the real world and assume that it's going to just be amazing, and then realize that there are a lot of people at risk because we did not take their consideration into account when we were building them. So definitely we're talking about something really far-fetched about the technology, but even the practices, what practices works, what practices are important when we are working with them. So I want to situate ourselves. I work at the Alan Turing Institute, which is a research center. So a lot of work that we do are around understanding the benefit and harms of AI. But at the same time, our focus from the Turing Way has been how we apply best practices. What are these best practices and what do they mean to people? And not defining it ourselves, but engaging community from all around the world to define those and bring it back in their own communities. So that's the gist of what that phrase means to me. Ariel?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you, Malvika. The phrase building AI with people rather than at people, it was definitely, it was a spur of the moment thing, but it was definitely intended to get across that these products are not developed in a vacuum. They're rarely, the creation of a single person. There's a lot of work that goes into them, both behind the scenes, if we think about people like data creators or data annotators who are often, this job's often outsourced and it's paid very poorly, all the way through to people who are being impacted.
And there's the poor connection Ariel was talking about.
We've had this today, and she'll be back in a second.
Or expected to use. I'm back. Where did I leave off, Malvika? I'm so sorry. My
You're
internet
fine.
gremlins. They just where did I leave off?
Just a few seconds. You were talking right. Like we didn't miss anything. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. Just apologies for anyone who's watching live. I do have internet gremlins, I'm afraid. But yeah, so I was just trying to say that these tools, they're not developed in isolation, they're not used in isolation. And a lot of the worries and concerns that people rightly have about some of the rapid introduction of these tools could actually be mitigated to a certain extent, probably not totally eliminated, but mitigated certainly, if you take the approach of building AI tools with people rather than simply building AI tools and then foisting them on people. So yeah, that's where the phrase originated, and that's what I think about. And yeah, also 100% agree with all of Malvika's comments about building community, about driving forward engagement and thinking about best practices when it comes to delivering this work. The Alan Turing Institute is the National Institute for AI and Data Science in the UK. And one of our sort of driving forces is to advance world-class research and apply it to national and global challenges. And that involves us also bringing best practices in applying this research wherever we are as well.
I love it. I love it. I love that you bring the topic of diversity. I mean, such an overused word, but it's still nonetheless not less important, right? And I don't think a lot of people kind of think about it, but diversity and AI research is a very important topic, and then kind of it's not talked about a lot because everybody's talking about the bias of the AI models, AI systems, and how it works, the training data. But what about the bias and diversity and misrepresentation in AI research and development itself, right? Because it affects obviously everything. And I know Ariel, Malvika, you've shared the paper with us. Malvika was working on. If you could talk about that paper kind of and how it breaks down all the issues, and kind of how I started to read it, and I got the
It's
I got
really
the
long,
idea
Elena.
I got the idea of what you were talking about, but obviously you kind of you'll just summarize it better for everyone here as well, because I think it's a really important topic that you raised there.
Yeah. So the paper that we wrote, it's with my team, and Ariel is one of the author of that paper, where we are trying to professionalize a role called research community manager. We're calling it research community manager in line with something called research software engineer, which has celebrated 12 years of success. Because people recognize that you can't build a software without the involvement of people who understand the research context at the same time that they do have skills to build the research technology. In the past, and not very far past actually, all the academics were expected to learn everything and understand how to develop software, how to engage their communities, how to go and talk to their funders, and how to mentor others and supervise and all of that. And what we are trying to do is to say, no, you don't need to do all of that. We all can specialize on things that we are very good at, and we can actually make a team science rather than isolated single person doing everything, which is impossible. With the fast-paced development in data science methodology and AI, it's absolutely impossible that we expect one person to understand all of these, and also expect them that they would actually do really good community engagement, or that they would go out and seek support from stakeholders that they need, or that they would go out and communicate their work fairly and openly and transparently. So the research community management profession definitely comes from open source community managers who would have in the past engaged software developer community or gamers community, and they have been quite successful because volunteers do have their experience as users, and they can embed most of their experiences in developing a technology that works for them. So we want to bring that idea into research context and say, community managers are not just everybody. These people actually have really unique skill set. They understand the socio-technical context, not just technical context within which we operate, within which we develop our AI technology. And we also want to emphasize a lot on participatory process. Just going back to this topic of working with people and not at people, is that if we think that our technology is going to be useful for people, why don't we ask them, is this what you need? Is this the feature that works for you? Is it actually marginalizing your already marginalized community? If so, how can we mitigate that? How can we solve a problem that works for you and not just for me? And of course, it's easy for us to say while being a research organization, and sometimes it might not be easy for a company with very small number of people. But this is exactly what we want, is to build a more collaborative culture where we can have these conversations openly and identify our gaps and opportunities as well. So this paper has come out quite late. We actually worked for 3 years on this paper. It took us really long time. And within that period, another paper that Ariel was working on, which is called Research Software. No, sorry, Ariel, why don't you talk about that paper?
Yeah, so the paper that Malvika's just referenced is one that I'm an author on as well. And it's called A Manifesto for Recognizing and Rewarding Team Research Infrastructure Roles. And these types of roles, as Malvika's mentioned, are research software engineers, they're research community managers, they're research application managers, which draws parallels with product managers in industry. And I do have to say there's a lot of academia recognizing the benefit from industry of people who have more specialist skill sets, who are extremely skilled in, say, coding or collaboration skills as well. So that the paper that Malvika was referencing, the manifesto, that was written by me and a team of other people who are also working in these research infrastructure, team infrastructure roles, talking about our experiences, looking in detail at some of these roles and how they've come to emerge, and like the history behind their professionalization and what current efforts there are to sort of present them as these formal and professional roles, because that helps to recognize them. And then we also propose multiple different strategies for people to recognize and reward these roles from, actually giving people proper pathways to develop in them and developing more senior versions of these positions that move away from maybe direct engagement. Sorry, I'm getting an echo.
No, we can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. So then also thinking about, and again, this is also taking it from a very academic perspective, but we're thinking about things like expanded recognition of the different kinds of contributions, and emphasizing that there's an importance around focusing on the process of doing research as well. And I'd argue that this also applies to thinking about how we develop AI. The process of doing that development and thinking about what you include, what you consider at each stage is also very, very important. And then finally, a system to validate research outputs as well, and sort of make sure that they're of high quality, so that we're, again, emphasizing that high quality outputs are really more important than voluminous outputs as well. So that's sort of the background of the paper that we've just been discussing, and it ties in really nicely with Malvika and team's deep dive into the research community manager role that really picks apart just what types of skills it mean people who do well in these roles have, the types of additional benefits they can bring to teams, even the history of how these roles have evolved over time. It's a really fascinating deep dive.
Can I also just add to that? Eventually at the end, this point that Elena, you said diversity, this is what we want, like recognizing diverse role, diverse people, and also, sometimes community management can be categorized as care infrastructure or care roles or caring, women's role or people with marginalized identity roles. And they would end up being low-paid salaried job, which is why Ariel is talking about incentivizing them, rewarding them, recognizing them, building long-term career pathway, which is what the deep dive that I do in my paper. So definitely, ultimately, all of these are how do we overcome the systemic problem within technology, which has underrepresentation of women, underrepresentation of marginalized communities, or people with identities that are generally not seen in tech scene.
So can you, I don't know if you want to talk about any case studies, because I know you guys have some information on that, where the research community manager's role was, essentially just very important and integral to the work that people were doing, and how it impacted and affected the research, the AI research, the work that was undergoing.
Yeah, I would bring the example of the open source communities, and specifically the Turing Way, which is a project we've been building for the last 5 years. It's a community-led guide on data science. It's a guide which may be seen as a book for someone who has not been part of the community, but what it is exactly is a collection of people from all around the world, from different disciplines, different sectors, including industry and government and policymakers, who actually want to change the culture, the way data science is done. And they have co-written over 300 chapters together across 6 guides, on guides on reproducibility, collaboration, communication, project design, ethics, as well as we record a lot of community processes for how we are doing this. So a lot of work that we do not get published in the book, because the work that we are doing is a lot around engaging community in the conversation that they care about, so they don't feel isolated in their own experiences. At the same time, mobilizing communities on shared ideas of what they might have thought is individual weirdos idea in a single room, but then they come into a very global context where this is no longer singular weird idea. It is actually a normal experience that people have. So the Turing Way has, from the very beginning, had the community manager, which is very lucky thing to have for open source, because a lot of projects are volunteer led. In our case, we were lucky to find funding from the institute from the very beginning. In fact, I was one of the first community managers for the project. And then I kind of graduated to co-lead the project. Now we have Annalie Steele, who's the community manager. And the more you would talk to the community, they're closer to the community manager than they're closer to the project lead or anybody, because they are engaging with the community manager on a day-to-day basis. They're building relationship with them. They're sharing their accessibility needs. They're sharing their concerns. And these people kind of are very instrumental for that space to feel safe, to feel like that people have voices despite they might be speaking in small groups. So that's one of the examples, but we do have several other examples from the Turing. I wonder, Ariel, if you want to talk about one of the projects.
Yeah, so one of the other projects that I think is also particularly relevant here is an example of the Data Safe Haven project. This project started back in 2018 at the Alan Turing Institute, when essentially a group realized that the currently existing commercial solutions for trustworthy research environments, and these have been called various different things over the years, could be data lakes, could be secure research environments. There's a lot of different names, but it's essentially a safe technical space to do analysis on sensitive or personal data with a variety of different controls depending on how sensitive the data is. And the Data Safe Haven was essentially born out of the need for additional flexibility from the Alan Turing Institute, particularly for an event we run called Data Study Groups, where a whole bunch of people coalesce on the Turing for 2 weeks, and it's sort of like a hackathon on steroids. It's incredible that we have people staying up all night and things like that to really get to grips with some data. But I digress.
I love
the
it.
Data Safe
Keep
Haven. Go and look them up. Truly, there's something to experience. They've done such a great job with those. And the the Data Safe Haven was born out of a need to provide trustworthy research environments for these events. They worked very hard on getting to the point where they were able to open source the code for this trustworthy research environment, and they've started doing specific outreach into the community, because it also turns out that perhaps unsurprisingly, the Turing is not the only institute who is concerned about how to safely perform analysis on data that is considered sensitive. There's a whole group of UK folks who are interested not just in the policy or data governance side of things, but they're also interested in the technical side of things and thinking about how to connect different bits and pieces of the infrastructure that has been built all together, how to help people to identify standards for this type of work as well. And so all of this is really coming together in the UK Trustworthy Research Environment community. The Turing plays a key role in leading, but is crucially not the only organization that's involved in leading this. This is really a collaborative effort of, I believe it's over 100 organizations at this point are represented in the community, coming together, doing the volunteer work, and thinking about these very, very pressing and important questions. You know, when you boil it down, you know, they're thinking about how to make sure that, say, data that's shared with the NHS could be safely accessed, or sensitive travel information can have analysis done on it to improve people's traffic management approaches and things like that. And they're questions that people care about really quite a lot. If you ask the general public about what they care about in terms of their data and how it's being used, security is a massive one. And this community, this sort of self-generated, self-driven community, is really trying to tackle some of these issues in a way that's connected and joined up and very collaborative as well. So I'd say that that's also a massive, massive success from the Turing. But then the other one I'm going to mention, and then I think Malvika will take over, is the work that we've been doing with the Practitioner Hub as part of the Turing Way as well. So this is a group of organizations. It's being supported by
I'll take over. It's supported by Innovate
Bridge
UK.
AI, which is a massive initiative. We have around 20 organizations with a huge variety of different individuals participating on that, looking at taking them through various different stages of assessing AI readiness, of thinking about the stakeholders that are going to be impacted by some of the ways that they're working and the goals that they want to achieve, and starting to have them think strategically about how they're going to apply AI or how they can support their clients in applying AI in ways that are thoughtful, collaborative, that utilize open source, that work on a trustworthy basis, that have a very high standard. And it's been we're about a month into the cohort, and it has just been such a brilliant experience. And I'm gonna let Malvika take over and tell you a bit more about that.
I am very unable to share my screen. I am using Firefox, and Firefox doesn't like different things. But we do have slide deck, and we can share some example. So the project that Ariel is talking about, we launched last year, and one of the things that we wanted to do, and I'm kind of telling my secret in the public, is that when we developed the Turing Way with the community, talking about its impact at the institutional level is difficult because we work with individuals who are volunteers from different organizations from different parts of the world, and we can't really pinpoint and say this has happened in an organization because a volunteer from that organization worked with us. So we wanted to really generate some impact at the institutional level to say that best practices have importance, and we should be investing in best practices. We should be investing time in learning about them, and we should be learning not just in terms of it's good to have, but actually be practically implemented in an organization. So last year, we got funding from Bridge AI, which is, as Ariel was saying, 100 million investment from Bridge AI, UKRI. We worked with 5 organizations, which included Office of National Statistics, British Antarctic Survey, Energy System Catapult, Genomics England, and DigiHall, which is a small medium enterprise. And we work with them individually to identify how do they use the Turing Way best practices, how has it helped them to build better collaboration in technology, and how do they think that these resources can help them advance their own AI research or own data science. It was quite successful. We had really great people who worked with us. We built case studies and we shared them across with different people. And as a result, we got about 40 companies expressing their interest to work with us. And these companies, not all of them are big or nationally accredited. These are some of them are really small or micro organizations. So this year we're working with about 20 organizations from very, very different sectors, including health, agriculture, creative, manufacturing, and so on. And what we are trying to do is to work with them to understand what are the real world problems of small, medium enterprises when they try to adopt and implement AI. And a lot of time, those are very human problems that we don't have time, we don't have resources. We think it's important, but we can't focus on this right now because we have other problems going on. As usual, to my behavior and community management, I would go and say, let's do stakeholder engagement and deliver like 2-hour long training. And then people would give feedback, oh, that was all great, but we don't have resource to allocate to this right now. And then we have a separate conversation where we will be like, if you had done stakeholder engagement analysis, we could have actually had more informed conversation. So getting them to see that spending some time, which seems very useless, in developing those stakeholder map actually pays off in the long term. People are able to identify their funders, they're able to identify who are the policymaker in the space, who are their competitor in the space, how they can actually collaborate with each other, which is another thing that I love about this Practitioners Hub, that I would have thought that small, medium enterprises are so small that they wouldn't want to share their resources with others. I was so wrong. These companies are so keen to collaborate with each other. They want to share their experiences. They want to share their time. They're very generous in sharing advice and resources, which is something I had not thought. And I think it's also very important to recognize that people do want to talk to each other. They want to share their challenges of navigating AI landscape. They are very interested in identifying solution together. There is less restriction on them than big organization to actually do things more creatively and innovatively. So I feel like there's a lot that we as researchers can learn from them, but at the same time, they can leverage all the resources that we are able to develop for their benefit and use that. Yeah, I'm very excited about this project. Maybe it's worth mentioning because we're talking about AI, because you asked us an example where community management has worked. Alexandra Araujo Alvarez, one of our really favorite colleagues, she worked with me in delivering the first cohort, and now she's a senior research community manager as a result of working with us for the Bridge AI Turing team. What she's doing is working even more closely with small industries to identify and talk to them about their problem, matching them with external advisors who are extremely talented people from different industries who can give them one-on-one advice. So small companies may not have, let's say, capacity for ethics team, or may not have capacity for a machine learning expert. And these are the, we call them independent scientific advisory, who can talk to them on one-on-one basis. And Ale has been so fantastic at making sure that she maps those problems and she makes those solutions more publicly available rather than those one-on-one conversation. And she's been doing some really brilliant work, which I'm excited to see coming in the next months.
Yeah, just a big +1 on the level of collaboration and connection we've seen already in this cohort and in the previous cohort. I feel it's a really great example of deliberately setting up a space where people and organizations come really openly and ready to have those kinds of interesting discussions with each other and explore sort of the connections and learn from each other. And I think we're also learning a lot from them right back as well. I don't think it's a one-directional street. I think I'm definitely learning a hell of a lot about sort of the actual applications as well, and what it looks like from the perspective of small and medium enterprises.
Yeah, I was gonna say when we were yesterday talking during our prep call as well, you mentioned that you were very surprised, Malvika. You mentioned that you were very surprised because the interest and the engagement the businesses expressed, and it's really interesting because at the end of the day, this collective intelligence, right? That's what drives this technology, whether you want it or not. And you both mentioned that it doesn't exist in isolation, and the progress just goes forward, and we are all helping along. And even without the government explicitly helping us, communities are self-organizing, they're building the infrastructure themselves, people are communicating, horizontal connections and networking and sharing and expressing their ideas. And it's been expanding and proliferating, and it's been all over the place, right? As we were talking about yesterday, even when you look at the conferences of all different types, right? They used to be kind of very, very silent, very separate. Every privacy experts are going to their own conferences, everybody's got just about their business and stuff like that. But today, no, everybody's interconnected. People are talking to each other. Professionals are looking for input of other professionals in the space or outside of the space. That's exactly what this bringing all the stakeholders together means. And the funny thing is, the stakeholders a lot of the times don't even know they are the stakeholders. A lot of the people, for some reason, I mean, I know the reason, I'm just not going to say it here, but we all know that reason. They already they have this preconceived notion of like, I am not allowed to express my thoughts about that technology because I don't have either experience or the education or whatever that may be, right? Which is an absolutely ridiculous idea to me. Why would people think that this technology impacts us all in our daily lives, even as we speak? and why wouldn't I get a say in that? And I think that, the work that you guys do is very important to kind of just whatever keeps bringing this awareness and just convincing people at this point it's okay to say it, whatever your thoughts may be. You may be, embracing this technology, and you may be very reserved and about it, but every voice needs to be heard. And yeah, kind of these are my 2 cents, I would say.
I would share an example just on that. This evening, Ariel and I were delivering a workshop for our cohort, and the workshop ended earlier, and some people stayed on, and then conversation ended up happening. And the conversation ended up with one person from a kind of nonprofit organization expressing their fear about not knowing what AI is doing and feeling like that they are missing out on everything and they don't know where to begin. And another person on the call, hey, I have actually navigated that. Would you like to have a call with me? And for me, like, that's the realization of holding spaces for these conversations to have. Because if we had said, oh, fine, workshop ended, we just close the call and we go away, some of these conversations would never happen. Some of these fears will never be expressed. Some of these help will never come. And I think that really kind of summarizes what community manager does. It's like, how can we have people have those conversations in a place that they feel safe enough to talk about it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it is sort of a bit of give and take from the participants as well. So we are lucky to work with 20 organizations who come to this ready to share with an open mind, who want to learn from each other and want to work together to discuss common challenges and figure out solutions and kind of share their perspectives and how they're using AI and the worries and blockers they've experienced from inside their organizations. And so I do want to give them a shout out because they've come ready to do that sharing. And so I think it does make it easier to create that space for them as well, because their mindset is there already.
Kind of to switch gears a little, just we're pretty much all over the agenda anyway, so let's just let's talk about infrastructure a little bit, right? For what do you think, kind of in your experience, what's the kind of the biggest bottleneck, I would say, for small, apart from the budget, obviously, right? So a company that wants to implement and integrate AI into their business practices, but what's kind of the infrastructure is one of the big issues coming up. And what's kind of in your experience, what answers can small and medium-sized enterprises and startups kind of what can they face, and how can they overcome it if they have to work on a very, very small budget? And you, Malvika, shared that with us earlier. We were talking about it, and I experienced it in my practice as well, right? Because when you have those grand plans for the organization, I'm gonna give you the stars and the moon, this is your AI governance project plan, and I have everything mapped out, and the organization is just, we have no funds for all of your grand plans, right? And you just start to think differently. So that's my just very long and weird question.
I actually have three kind of things to that, and I'm sure there are thousands of things, but like three on the top of my head. Definitely infrastructure. There are costs to testing. Let's say, if a company wants to switch to big data model or whatever that might be, there is a cost to testing. There's infrastructure cost to testing. One of our partners in Bridge AI, which is Digital Catapult, they run something called Machine Learning Garage. In Machine Learning Garage, they work with companies for 3 to 4 months, but during that time, they give them access to free compute or whatever is needed from infrastructure perspective, where they can test their ideas and they can launch their ideas. Because that's quite important, this initial investment. Is this idea worth pursuing? Do I want to waste my time testing an idea that may actually fail? So having those incubator programs where you are able to test those ideas. And there are many incubator programs. At least in the UK, there has been a lot of investment right now in improving AI capacity among companies. And a lot of companies may know about it, may not know about it, and a lot of time that's what the community should be doing, is connecting with each other on these opportunities. So infrastructure is one. Another is that when I was doing my research on developing curriculum for the Turing Way Practitioners Hub, I came across all the recommendation for how can companies navigate changing landscape of AI regulation and policies. And their solution was create a committee drawing members from all your different departments, including ethics, technology, partnership, and so on. And it works for companies like Google and Microsoft or GitHub or whichever big companies. They do have teams and they do have dedicated staff across these companies, and they can sit into a committee and they all can brainstorm if an idea is ethical enough or not. But a small company which has one CEO, one CTO who are also developer and they're also raising fund, they cannot form this committee, which is something that I'm very keen on. Can government body or research organization actually provide those committee kind of spaces for these companies, so they can test their ideas? So for me, ethical question is a big one. These companies may not always be thinking about ethics. In fact, one of my really close friends who's working in AI launched a product during COVID because it was necessary and important, and he retracted his product after the COVID pandemic was kind of under control, because he realized that he hadn't done ethical testing of his work. And sometimes I wonder if that in emergency situation, when we actually lean into AI technology, and these AI technology have not previously been built with this ethical mindset, we actually may end up causing harm. But people would argue, is harm enough or solution important in a situation of pandemic? So I generally think that we should not think about emergency like the pandemic as a place to test our technology, first of all. But also, if we had already built our ethical mindset across technology we built, we would be sure that it doesn't matter when we deploy it, it's not going to harm the community, because we have thought about it. So infrastructure, ethics are two of them, and I forgot about the third one, and I'm sure, Ariel, you have a few in your mind.
I do. So I think the key one that I was expecting to be your third one is data. A lot of companies don't have data in a format that they can use to take advantage of AI tools. Like that's a really big thing. Like they have a rich treasure trove of company information or like key data, but it's not standardized. It's in different formats. The versioning's all over the place. The metadata isn't quite in order as well. And I think that I've heard this from a couple of different organizations, both on like larger scales and then also on smaller scales, that really one of the barriers that they had not anticipated was that you do need to do data cleaning before you can, do local training of an LLM on your data, or, introduce an algorithm into your data set. And so I think that this is, that data is another key one where a lot of organizations have data available, but the usability of it is not there for AI and machine learning just yet. And so I think that is another big barrier. And then that also depends on them either being able to hire the expertise either by consultancy or by developing it in-house, or maybe some lucky person is tasked to do this wrangling of the data and get it into a consistent format so that they can actually properly exploit it and leverage it in applying AI and developing tools based on that. So I think that's my key one that's missing from there.
So the takeaway will be from kind of all of those points. AI literacy is crucial, right? You can have all the data in the world and you have the money and you're ready to go and just train the algorithm and use everything and use predictive algorithm if you want to just be able to predict whatever you need for your business. But if you're using that just on the data that you basically were sitting on and collecting without doing anything with that data, all your predictions might and end up hurting and will end up hurting people. And with all the resources that you had, it's worth nothing in the end. And going back to AI literacy, that's I would like to believe that's what we are doing here as well, right? By having those bi-weekly discussions with
Yeah.
brilliant people in the space, just by letting kind of steam out a little, and just because there are a lot of things that are under is there a word like under talked about? I just invented a new word. So billions of topics, even in my head right now, that just I would love to talk to people about, which I don't see being covered. And I think that's kind of our small contribution when it comes to this, because it's at the end of the day, again, talk about overused words, but AI literacy, it's very important, and it doesn't matter where you whether you have resources or not. For that, that's your duty to kind of do that and start with that and keep educating yourself as a business or as an individual. It doesn't matter. And yeah, that's a great slide that you
Yeah, I
up
really
there.
like this picture because we were just talking about, the big guys who have all these resources. Like, look at this lively crowd. I mean, we have everybody here. I mean, we have public, of course, but, ethics, data wranglers. I really like that. I mean, this is something new. I heard about stewards, but like data wranglers, sure, bring that on. I mean, and this is really interesting because it's just basically also speaks to earlier points that Malvika and Ariel were making, is that when we talk about the practitioners and just how this technology is omni-use, it's like it's everywhere. So it's not only some like niche thing that is I think that's just gonna develop somewhere in a silo, but this is actually all the sectors are being affected, all the sectors. And you guys shared the slide, like we have healthcare, we have, research, we have climate, we have, I mean, it's not just the software development industry. And yeah, I think so. Yeah, this picture actually shows us how many people across the industry and the organization could be and should be involved in making these decisions and like working together. How do you bring them together? How you make sure that they're all communicating and all the stakeholders know what the goals are and things like that. So this is definitely applicable to like larger organizations. But as you mentioned, the smaller companies are facing, I mean, I think that at some point they will understand that this is this is how much they need to encompass, but how do they accomplish that? That's kind of challenging. That's where, I don't know, maybe government research support can come in handy, as Malvika was saying. But yeah, I mean, this tech is everywhere. There is no hiding from it.
I really love the collection of these images too, because we wanted to convey that you may not have all the experience, and have that humility that you don't have experience for everything. And there are people in the space who bring the experience and the expertise and the willingness to actually provide that. So other thing that we didn't really touch on is in the Practitioners Hub, the reason why we are creating that space is that we want people to adopt AI with open source ways of working, because we identify that they may not always have all these resources, but if they are working openly across these different sectors that we were mentioning, they would actually find that someone else has already done this work and they have shared their work very openly, and they were willing to share their experience and how someone can solve it. So we don't want small companies to be left out because these big companies are capable of doing the market capture, because these companies can actually empower users and community members to have a power of choice. Bigger companies want to capitalize on locking in the users on multiple things that users cannot get out of. But the real freedom in internet or the modern world would look like that I have the choice to choose a technology that works for me, that benefits my community, that pays my bill, that pays my community's bill. And I want people to actually not think about technology as just a harmless thing. Nothing is harmless. No, none of the technology we use is harmless.
Can I kind of ask you to briefly talk about, so in your paper, Research Community Managers, that explores that role, you are talking about the importance of reproducibility, right? When it comes to AI research and the papers that are being published, and there's been published a lot, as we all know. You can't keep up. That's a different topic. But what's the kind of, from the people who haven't read an AI research paper in their life, what's the big deal if it can be reproduced? Why the emphasis on that?
Yeah.
Reproduce. Sorry,
for it.
Malvika,
Go for it, Ariel. I've been speaking a lot. You should talk.
Okay. So, I mean, this is not a unique challenge associated with AI. In fact, there's the way that academic research in particular has historically been presented means that if you pick up a paper from 10 years ago and attempt to look at the methods that they've provided and follow them, like you would a recipe, to replicate the results of the study that's been published, it's extraordinarily hard to do that in a vast majority of cases. And there's some really interesting papers out there where sort of very well-known people have come along and tried to replicate their own work from a published paper and not been able to do that. And that's obviously very challenging because the entirety of science and technology is predicated on the idea that once you've made a discovery and you publish it and you've done the work in a robust way, people should be able to build on your finding. But if people can't reproduce the results with the methods and the approaches that they have available to them and documented in your paper, how do we know that that finding is a consistent finding? You know, it's much harder to sort of trust that. And thank you very much to the person who has shared the definition. So this is a great table that kind of shows the difference between us when we're talking about reproducible, replicable, robust, and generalizable analysis. So this is not, so talking about reproducibility and emphasizing reproducibility in combination with open working is really important when we think about academic research in particular, but it's also important for sort of industrial research, because if you think about industry, if you couldn't reproduce results, how would you be able to build some?
She'll be back. She'll be back in a second.
I am not even worried.
Well, it seems like it's longer than 20 seconds this time. But just to say, as you were saying, there's a lot of paper on reproducibility and reproducibility crisis. And the reason for that is that we want to build trust in technology.
You know, really critical. And it's really critical so that people can actually trust and build on the work that's been done before in academia, so that people don't spend time reinventing the wheel, you know, having to rediscover and work out different methodologies, and can actually take work that has been published and apply it in a setting where it's really critical to have it be consistent and to demonstrate consistent results as well. So Malvika, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that as well.
Not at all. I think we were right on the same sentence.
You were just completing each other's sentences.
We worked too long with each other at this point.
I'm not sure if Ariel is frozen or just she's just done talking.
She's done talking. We have about 5 minutes, and when I met Ariel this evening, and I was like, oh, you know, we should definitely end on the fact that at the end of the day, we are all trying to make lives of people better with technology. And if we all can remember that in any place that we are working in, I think we are looking for a hopeful future. I know that a lot of time when we talk about AI, it feels like we are waiting for a doomsday and things will go bad and that AI is going to take over the world. But at the end of the day, that's not going to happen, hopefully. If we are actually thinking about people from the very beginning, I feel like we can do better. But also just coming back to our own humble projects that we work on in academic setting, what I'm very excited about is ideas of Hacktoberfest, which is something I definitely wanted to shout out on. If you've not been part of open source before, October is the time that you can go and explore open source projects, contribute by fixing a bug, fixing a link, just creating an issue on someone's repository, the Turing ways, participating in Hacktoberfest. Be part of that ecosystem. If you like what we are doing, you can stay. If you don't like what we are doing, you can stay and make us better. And the fact that open source isn't just those tons of losers working on projects. Google funds this project every single year called Google Summer of Code, which allows people from developing countries to participate in open source projects. And a lot of people that I know from Google Summer of Code are really engaged people who are leading on projects and communities. So I completely ask people to be part of these conversations. It's no longer just about being users of technology that they don't know if they can trust, but really taking that step and say, no, I want to be part of this conversation. This concerns me. I want to solve this. I want to know what people are talking about. And all of these that we are worried about with jargon in AI will go away, because we'll know that at the end of all of these is just our life is either going to become better or someone's going to try to ruin it, so we can go before them and try to take over that space before someone else has the chance to do it.
That was optimistic, Ariel. Any more optimistic notes?
I think that there is such a lot of exciting scope to apply AI well and in innovative ways to make people's lives better. And I think that taking some time to do it in a thoughtful way that takes into account stakeholders, that takes into account affected groups, that has people contributing their expertise on data and governance and ethics and all of these things, and really thinking about the potential impacts. Like there's such a great future out there where if we do it right, it'll be amazing. It won't be completely unrecognizable society as we know it, with everyone out of a job, because there will still be humans around. And I think ultimately you do need humans to talk to humans, and humans want to talk to humans and to connect with each other and to collaborate with each other. But I sometimes come across as a bit negative about the potential of AI, and I do think that there's a great future out there, and if it's done right and with thought and with a proper process, that there could be really exciting applications out there in ways that we haven't even considered yet. But the fact that there are ways that we haven't even considered yet means that we need to take some time to do that thinking, and that's okay. I think we should take that time to do that thinking. And that companies, don't necessarily need to just all rush and hurry to get started with AI just because they think they need to maintain a competitive edge. Take the time, do the consideration, don't sort of blunder around wildly in the dark, because I don't think that that's going to be a profitable strategy in the long run. And yeah, I guess my other thing is that a lot of people want to collaborate with each other. They want to come together and connect and consider how these things are going to impact and do this thoughtful work. And it doesn't all have to be in silos. We don't have to have sort of our lone genius at the top of the tower. It doesn't have to be like that, and it's not like that already. And so people can let go of that. We don't have to be everything. We don't have to have all the answers. And I think people are starting to see that, and there are definitely pockets, where people are enthusiastic about talking to each other and collaborating, and that really makes me feel very optimistic as well.
Don't you think it's interesting in a way? I'm sorry, at least yeah, I'll just be brief. It's very interesting how this technology kind of brings people together in a sense you wouldn't otherwise have expected work together at all and be interested in each other's work, and just on many levels it brought me and got a lot of very, very cool and interesting and brilliant people in my life. And if that's kind of one good thing, obviously it's not, but if that's one good thing I'm gonna take out of it, I'll take it. But there are absolutely a million other ways. But I am like Ariel, I'm cautiously optimistic, I'm just always trying to anticipate something bad happening, but secretly hoping for the best outcome.
I just wanted to give the final shout out to the open source, side of things, and which is not accidental, because we actually, all of us met at the open source conference in the United
Yes.
Nations this past summer, when Alan Turing Institute was present, and when folks from all the different industries, government, academia, business were discussing how open source practices could be leveraged and implemented. And this is what Malvika, I think, was talking about, the the initiatives, the October initiatives, when you can, if you're into like open source development of practices and processes, you can go and just kind of play with those, or just review what's out there, what other people are doing. I just wanted to showcase that that particular aspect once again, this project that the Institute is doing, so that folks could kind of collaborate and use open source practices for, in the AI realm as well. So that's it's kind of my concluding remark. But I know we're kind of out of time. So if anything else that you would like to share with our audiences, just before we conclude the talk, please do.
Can I give shout out to Sonal Shreya, who's my childhood friend and who's in a country which might be like midnight now, and she's still online to listen to this. So very happy. And also I see someone joining from Karachi, Pakistan, which is probably 3 a.m. So thank you folks for joining this late. We're very, we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was, I loved all of our discussions, and the prep calls are probably kind of my, the second favorite thing, but nothing compares to the lives, but it's truly a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. What a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And
this has been such a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
I mean, thanks to you two, obviously. We were just kind of just winging it as always. I am not sure when our next live is at this point. I need to look at the schedule, but Alicia, if you want to make an announcement, as you usually do. If you don't, I'll just end this.
I think, our next talk will be in a couple of weeks, and we will definitely announce that. So folks, please stay tuned. We're trying to keep the bi-weekly schedule. And that, by the way, is going to be our 1-year anniversary, because exactly a year ago in like late October, Elena and I decided to embark on this adventure. And we will thank everybody. We'll share a special post about this, because we've had so many amazing people over this last year. And we want to name every single one of them. And we discussed so many interesting topics. So that's going to be like a 1-year inaugural anniversary of AI in real life. So please stay tuned. Thank you.
Congratulations.